Did you know that the first person the Bible records as having an angel encounter was a servant girl named Hagar? Interesting, hey? I want us to look for a few minutes at the ministry of angels in the life of Christ. Jesus had only 2 recorded encounters with angels. The first was at the beginning of his ministry. The second was at the very end of his earthly ministry. In Matthew chapter 4, verse 6, we read of Satan, who is himself a fallen angel, a dark angel, tempting Jesus in the wilderness. The temptation is rather interesting. The devil quotes a Bible verse from Psalm 91 regarding angelic protection, verse 11 and 12. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. The devil's temptation is one regarding a shortcut to ministry success and abuse of spiritual power. That is, throw yourself off the temple in front of everybody. God will come and rescue you by angelic intervention, and you will be an overnight sensation. So read between the lines, and you won't have to take the hard road of going to the cross. Jesus resists the temptation of calling for angelic intervention, just like he did in the garden when he said to Peter, "Don't you think I could call on my Father and I could have 12 legions of angels at my disposal?" So angelic intervention can happen, but it is not always the will of God. Angelic intervention is not something we can claim and expect in any and every circumstance. Of course, it is wonderful when it does happen. I was talking to a Christian Aboriginal elder who was involved in the Aboriginal revival which swept across North and Western Australia in the early 80s. His name is Terry Giannini. He was telling me he was leading an outreach up there, and the team were travelling in an old bus along this outback road. There were men and women and children crowded into the bus, and the bus didn't have any doors, just an opening where the door would be. At one point, a small child falls out of the door of the bus and the mother screams. Everyone turns back to see what had happened, and they see this large pair of hands come down around the child and lower the child to the ground. The bus stops. They all run back to where the child was, and there wasn't a scratch on the child. That's angelic intervention. Likewise, Peter, who was arrested for preaching the gospel, he's thrown into prison, and an angel comes during the night, takes the chains off his wrists and leads him out of prison. But as I say, angelic intervention isn't a formula that can be applied in every situation. Listening to the survivors of persecution in East Indonesia in the early 2000s, some had witnessed incredible intervention, including appearance of angels. Others did not experience that. And where were the angels when a Texan gunman walked into a small Baptist church and killed 26 people? Where was angelic intervention when Stephen was being stoned by his persecutors? Yes, angelic intervention can happen, but it doesn't happen all the time. And in the wilderness, the devil tries to convince Jesus that angelic intervention was a guarantee, no matter the circumstances. Because all you got to do, Jesus, is claim that Bible verse, and we know the Bible is never wrong. But Jesus wasn't about to test the Lord. Then after the temptations, we read in verse 11 that angels came and attended him, which is a beautiful picture. Can't be entirely sure what it means. The word for attended is the Greek word diakoneo, which means to serve or to wait on, to minister to relieve the basic necessities of life. And given that Jesus had already been fasting for 40 days, my understanding of this verse is that angels came and provided him with food and with water. They broke his fast with supernatural provision. The angelic help of Psalm 91, which Jesus refused before, is now being given to him. It's reminiscent of another angelic encounter in 1 Kings 19, 3-8. Here Elijah is being ministered to by the angels after the showdown with the prophets of Baal. And he's running from Jezebel, runs for his life into the southern desert, and he fully expects to die. So let's read what happens. Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat under it and prayed that he might die. "I've had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he travelled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into a cave and spent the night. Perhaps the ministry of the angels to Jesus in the wilderness was very similar to that. There's one other encounter Jesus has with angels, and that's in Luke 22:43. Jesus was about to go to the cross, and he takes his disciples into the Garden of Gethsemane. He goes off by himself and he prays, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." Then an angel appears to him and strengthens him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. And I'm sure in this instance, the appearance of an angel was for a strengthening of spirit rather than a provision of food and water. So wrapping up, angels do protect, they do intervene, but not always. And angels can minister to the practical needs of believers in situations of great need. They can also draw alongside believers and provide spiritual strength to endure during a time of great hardship. To all that I say, thank God for the angels.